I am so excited to talk with you. For those who don't know you, Brenda Sellers. In your community, though, I'm going to say you're kind of a celebrity because you have been on the circuit of doing wonderful things in your community in Blount County and beyond. Now, I got the chance to meet you at a Loudoun County Women's Business Conference, and I said, this lady has a big personality. Tell me a little bit about yourself. You grew up on a farm?
I grew up on a farm. I'm the only child of, well, the only daughter between two brothers, and my dad was a farmer, and my mother was a housewife. So, and I learned to, my first job was actually saving Coca-Cola bottles back for refunds to get a refund, to get the deposit. And then I ended up working at a graphics company, and I went from the receptionist to the president. And then I've had other businesses. When I was in my teens, I had my first car detailing business because living on a farm, we had to go through a dairy farm to get to our home. So every day I'm cleaning my car because cows walk through the...
Oh, yeah.
So every day I'm cleaning my car. So I learned how to do a car detail business. And then that ended up being funny because my business ended up being a manufacturing business, and we made automotive aftermarket.
Kind of a full circle.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that was kind of bizarre. So,
what's it like? Now, I'm a city girl from
Yes,
Miami.
okay.
So tell me, what is it like growing up on a farm in East Tennessee?
Well, that's all we knew. We learned to bale hay. We drove tractors. We did whatever we had to do. It was just. It was, I guess, a hard life, but a fun life. And so we just, it was such a good life. My mom and dad were such good people. Dad, he never made any difference between me and and my brothers.
Okay.
You know, and the one thing about, I grew up tough, very similar to Pat Summitt's dad. Was just, he's a gruff farmer, and it's like, crying's for sissies, don't you cry, you know. No matter. And there's one of those stories in my book. I got hurt really badly, and I was running to catch him in his truck, and I slipped and fell, and my whole eye was cut from here, had like 12 stitches all the way down. Oh, no. And he's like, don't you be crying, don't you be crying. And Mom was like, well, now you're going to have to take her to the hospital. So, but I never did cry, but I was on the way to get some candy.
I have cried for far less. Please know I have cried. Your daddy would never want to know that I cried for far less. You know, listening to your beginnings, you know, growing up on a farm,
Yes.
You really kind of have done it all over your lifetime. Entrepreneur, author, philanthropist, I'm trying to remember all the ones, community leader, advocate. What role have you enjoyed the most in your life, Brenda?
All of them. I have no regrets. I live life to the fullest. If I die here today, nobody's died here, have they, in this seat?
No, not. Please don't.
That I have no regrets. I live life to the fullest because early on in my life, I was like, live life to your fullest. Don't wait till you retire. And everybody wants to travel, or they want to do all these things later. Well, maybe later never comes. And so I've just lived life to the fullest. I love the nonprofits, giving back. That's what I do best, is just give back to others and making a difference in people in life. And hearing you laugh, I just love your laugh. And thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all that you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Let's talk about business. How does a farmer's daughter, go in to lead a company? Because it started out, you said, in your teen years.
Yes. Well, I did the car detailing business back as a teen, and then I got this job, and this was wonderful because I didn't have to pick okra. I had real long hair. I had to pick okra. I didn't have to pick tomatoes, and I had air conditioned job, and we sit down. So it was so wonderful. And at the time, we were just kind of a smaller operation. We weren't selling any bigger companies. So from the receptionist all the way to the president, and we had a lot of licensed properties. So that was just like one of the businesses I did. And then the other one was the photography business. I did not mean to have a photography business. Me and Big Ed, we compete. We're both photographers. I'm Canon, he's Nikon.
Okay, who's Big Ed? Who's Big Ed?
Okay, Big Ed is the spouse, and you'll learn more about him in the book, but he's a photographer also. And we did not know how to photograph it's like a portfolio, you know what a portfolio is. Okay, so we photographed a portfolio. Well, our whole life we compete. We're totally opposites. He's very quiet. He has a Canon. He has a Nikon. I have a Canon. But we took these pictures of this little girl. She's 7 years old, and that one portfolio won 7 state beauty pageants. So that overnight got us a business in the beauty pageant business that all the other mamas wanted to take pictures of their, because we didn't know what we were doing.
Wait, okay, so I thought your photography business was like nature and such. It started out with portraits?
Yes. Yes, it started out with portraits. Well, both. I mean, we did a lot of nature too, but it started out. That's how we ended up doing a business, because we didn't really want a business. I was trying to run chromographics, and we was trying to do other things. And in the meantime, we had a scuba diving business, because we ended up, as we were photographers, we'd done the beauty pageants and went through that scene, but we didn't have underwater equipment. So that's a whole other photography world. So what we did, we had a business with, Big Ed was the instructor, and then that was my job, was to photograph them getting their certifications. So that was another business. But
okay, okay. So you the photography business,
yeah, and the scuba diving business,
scuba diving,
yeah, and the kind of the detail business that was
car detailing.
Yeah, it was like kind of a car detailing business, and then I did a lot of a lot of nonprofit. I did a lot of nonprofit. So,
what was it? How does one figure out they're good at running a business? Like, how do you just got started and the bug hit you and you're like, you know what, I like being my own boss?
Well, I had to learn a lot of leadership skills. I did a lot of the Leadership 1. I did the East Tennessee Regional Leadership. I read every book I could possibly find on running business. But running a business is like being an athlete. It's like raise the bar. You know, what else can you do? We get a really big sale. Oh, well, okay, well, what else can we do? And we made a lot of licensed properties like Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Harley. Those are all of our brands. We're like, well, what other brands can we get? So it was like, okay, this is never satisfied with the status quo. What can you keep doing to raise the bar? So, and being competitive, being a middle child, I don't know if you studied about being a middle child. Middle children are normally more competitive. So
I thought it would be oldest. I'm an oldest.
Okay, so you're the oldest.
Yes.
Okay, so oldest have a little tendency to be a little not bossy, but they're more of the leader. They're more of the leader.
My sister's going to say that lady is right. She is right as rain.
But then the middle children, you know, they're kind of competing between the older child and then I had, you know, of course, little brother, older brother, little brother. So by telling my book that, you know, of course, Mama loved, you know, Stevie. He was the oldest brother, and always, you know, she even saved his little toenail clippings. And so she's like every little thing.
Because it's all new, it's all first.
He was all the first. I was just but I was a daddy's girl, definitely, and that's part of the book story is that I'm definitely a daddy's girl. So
I love it, and you're talking about your book, and this is when I met you. And you were speaking at the Loudoun County Women's Conference.
Yes,
you spoke about your book. It's called "You Slept Where: Calamities of a Clumsy Businesswoman." And I was so tickled. I was so tickled because this is not one of those like pent up books. You tell some beautiful stories about your life and you know, just really what has gone on over the decades with you.
Yes. Well, and the first part of it is more about my dad, and then halfway through it's about my dad, and then the other part is about my mother and her dementia. And then the very end, I wasn't going to share his story, but Big Ed's story, he's got PTSD. He has 4 levels of trauma, so it's his story in there as well. So that's what made me finish the book, because 97.3% people never say they're going to write a book. Well, I know now that took 8 years, 2 years of rewriting. So, but if it hadn't been for my mother's story and being able to give back to like a nonprofit and Big Ed's story, because he's the hero. Big Ed's the hero.
So you talk so fondly of him, and I was so as a married woman myself, I was like, I like how she talks about her husband. Yes. Big Ed, so he was in the military? Is that where his PTSD comes from?
Well, he had that, and then his 4 layers, he was in Vietnam, and people say, well, that's so long ago. Well, if you have another traumatic accident, he was undercover investigator, and I kind of laugh. I said, I don't know what he does, as long as he gets me a bite. I don't really know. But then he did a lot of stuff in the undercover that you shouldn't see. Things that you see, you never...
They never leave you.
They never leave you, exactly. And then he had and this was your newscast, Carrot, he had a real tragic scuba diving accident that his partner died. And so that brought on another level of the PTSD. So, and then we always compete, you know, for the best photograph. So in this, I say he's the better photographer. So he's the photographer hero. So that's a pat on the back for Big Ed.
For your Big Ed. I love.
And he even has a fan club. He even has his own little fan club with Big Ed fan club. So.
Does he really?
Yes.
I don't have a fan club.
I have to bring you a Big Ed, the Big Ed fan club. So,
Is it hard to write so intimately about all the different people in your life in a book?
well, no, well, yes and no. Writing my dad's story, that was hard. And then as I got on to my mother's story, I say my sweet, timid Christian mother went through that vascular dementia that just changed her personality. And with, my mother would never say bad words at all. And that was just so sad how her personality changed, And I always say, Mama says, be nice. Well, it got towards the end, Mama wasn't so nice. It wasn't nice because it's the disease. And that's why I want to give back so much, because the people going through that, and with Mama, you just had to laugh. I mean, some of the things she'd say, we would take time about staying with her, and she'd say, now, does your parents know where you are? And I'd say, well, Mama, you're my parents. Just, well, I know that. I know that. And you just laugh and say, oh, I am your daughter. And then there was, she would know, and then times she didn't know. But it was just a tough time. But the best thing you can do, and how I ended up finishing that book, I would write. Mother was an avid reader, and so I would write my stories. And I wrote her a letter. She loved to read letters, and she could still read. And so I wrote her a letter. I stayed at the Shack Up Inn, the Ritz We Ain't in Mississippi. And come to find out, it's not so cheap to stay in a shack. That's a whole other story. But I wrote her a letter while I'm staying in that shack. So she could read, and I would send that letter to her. And that was the thing that she would do. She'd love to go to the mailbox and get her mail and to read the mail. So that was a big deal. That was sunshine in an envelope.
Gosh, what is it like to see a parent change?
Yeah, it's hard. It was really hard. But I knew the first time that Mama had an outburst, because Mama's timid, she's shy, and she did an outburst. And we're like, that's not her. So we knew there was something's not right. And the only time my mother, and we were farm people, my parents were never sick. We just never were sick. You just go on. Go on. But the only time that my mother, that we know of, and we think because vascular dementia is not many strokes, and on Easter, because Mom was all about cooking, she was a Southern cook. On Easter Sunday, she was like, she was on the couch, and so we knew something's wrong. And we think that might have been the start of her many strokes, because she never was in bed. Daddy was nobody was ever sick. So then as time went on, she just got worse and worse though. But part of the other story too, she kind of rallies at the end. So it's a sweet story, and the whole goal was just to have people to. We did the best we could. You're struggling with I'm running businesses. I'm raising 15. We raised 15 kids, and
I'm going to ask about that in a second. Okay.
We got Big Ed, and we're dealing with all the business issues. And then I'm doing I was on several boards at the United Way and a bunch of other New Hope and Blount County. So I'm on several boards. So it's how do you juggle all that, and then you deal, trying to do the best you can with your mother and then your dad. So you just do the best you can. You schedule, and you just do the best you can.
What do you hope people get out of this book?
Okay, several things. One is at the very end, I'm all about lists. And they go, well, how do you get so much done? Well, it's all about making lists. You have the same amount of time as everybody else. You got 24 hours in a day.
It doesn't feel like it sometimes, Brenda. It doesn't. But yes.
24 hours of the day. So, and then of course you get up at 2, so you're sleeping less than most people do. But then it's like, what are you doing the rest of that day? And it's what is your goals and what are you trying to do? Because running businesses and doing all, I just had to schedule, focus on that, but had goals, and especially if you've got little children, once those children are grown, they don't really go away, but you're still, it's like you missed all that opportunity. So it's juggling, and then even with my parents, with the three of us, we tried to all just do a schedule, and then I was traveling for business. So it's trying to schedule that, and it's all about just being goal driven and knowing what you want out of life.
Oh, I like that so much. Let's talk about your travels.
Okay.
Because your list, I thought I had a little list of travel. You have done an a vast amount of traveling.
Yes. Well,
what are some of your highlights?
Okay, so most of that was business. I did a lot of the business, but early on, I had mentors, and of course now they call them life coaches. And one thing that they said, as a business traveler sees the hotel, the airport, the hotel, their meeting, back on the plane. And they said, always try to, if you can, and pay for staying the weekend on your dime, because you may not have the chance to go back. So that's part of my story, that I would do. It's always work before you play, get the business done. And then I would stay, of course, on my dime, and then go to different places. And then the list started when I was a scuba diver. My first chapter is about a scuba diver. Well, I didn't really want to be a scuba diver, but I just happened to, my whole life serendipity. I met an instructor, and he said, hey, I'm starting a class the next day. I'm like, well, that wasn't on my lifelong list, but I'm like, well, okay. So I signed up for that.
Let's add it up.
Yeah, I signed up, and then Big Ed, he couldn't swim. He's a horrible swimmer. Of course, I grew up on the lake, couldn't believe he couldn't swim. But anyway, I signed us up. So we're in class literally the next day. Well, that ended up to Certified Scuba Diving 1, and then because we got a discount, we did Scuba Diving 2. But then we found all these places. So my list started as a child, marking a list, and it's something about, that was my day. You check off what you get done, because it's like, oh, I got it done.
It feels good.
Check it off. And so that's how that list started. I did the scuba diving list, and then I did and I talk about my book. I have a lot of books, and now those books are 50 books. Like, if all the states and all the different places I want to see, I have it categorized and organized. So that if I'm going somewhere, I'll just pull the book out and say, oh, I haven't been here, I haven't been there. So then it ended up being, oh, looky here, I'm just going to check that off the list.
I don't know if I'm inspired or jealous by your list. A little mix of both. Now, my son told me I had to ask you about the Ice Hotel?
The Ice Hotel. Okay, so this is bizarre. There again, very serendipity. This was at the time, we had some salespeople, and one of the sales ladies that was covering Canada, everybody was booked, except I said, well, can you go? We were training some sales rep. We sold automotive aftermarket places in Canada. This is in January. So, like, who wants to go to Canada in January? Well, I had just the night before, there was an article about, or the day before, about this ice hotel is open. So I was the first of 100 people to stay in the ice hotel.
Wait, I didn't know you were like the first.
Yeah, first 100 of that day.
I call that the first. The first group.
Yeah, the first group, because I did the business meeting, and then the funny part in the book is that Big Ed flies in. He's going to try to get the better pictures. It's very hard to photograph that ice because of the reflections and all that. So he's going to fly in.
It's so white and bright.
Yes, and so I pick him up at the airport, and he thinks we're going to stay at the Chateau de Mont. It's like this castle-looking place. Well, he sees it, and I said, oh, there we are. I'm like, no. I just keep driving. I said, no, we're staying at the Ice Hotel. So it's beautiful. If you go into my website, you can see the pictures of it.
Oh, we looked at all of them. We did.
Oh, you saw it? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And what's funny about it is a lot of people couldn't stand the cold. And if you couldn't stand the cold, then you check out and you go to the manor next door, and you could stay warm in the manor. So, but I'm like, no, I'm paying.
You did the ice.
Oh yeah, I said I paid to stay here. I'm going to pay to stay. I'm not going to leave, no matter how cold.
So you have to leave a coat on, because it is literally made out of ice.
Yeah,
like it's
yeah. And you have a rented like a snow
parka.
Yeah,
like one of those big outfits. Yeah.
Right. But Ed's so big, he didn't have gloves, and so he's cold. So it's a cute little story, but it's wonderful. Now the original is in Sweden. So that was in Sweden. This was in Canada, and every year they tear it down and build it again. So it's like really cool. But it was phenomenal because the lights, the chandelier, will change colors.
That is so
yeah. So
fun.
it's really something to see.
Do you have a favorite? So since you write about travel, do you have a favorite destination or favorite trip?
No. Well, once I've been there, one and done.
Okay.
because I'm too cheap to go back the second time. And it's all about budgeting the money. You go someplace different. So, but here in Knoxville, do you remember the little airport or airplane filling station?
Yes.
Okay, I reached out to the owner of that, and I'm going to be the first person to stay in that airplane filling station on September the 9th.
How fun is that?
Yes, because I also helped donate money back in the day to save that. So here I'm staying in it.
So let's talk about your philanthropy, because
Yes.
you really have touched a lot of different
Yes.
parts in East Tennessee. First, why do you do all of this? Because
Well, it's all
a lot
about
of folks don't.
it's all about giving out. And you know the story in the Bible about the widow's mite. And I actually got to go to Jerusalem, and I have it's a little necklace. It's a little widow's mite made into a necklace. And I think about that, like she gave everything she had, but then guess she was blessed. So I just learned early on just to give back to others and to help others.
So when you talk about philanthropy and giving back, we got to start first with the book, because this book is not a profit book.
Right.
How much have you given back with this book?
Well, the book itself has already raised $38,000 for 2 nonprofits.
Off a book?
A book, yes.
Okay.
Yes, and still raising more for another for the Alzheimer's Tennessee. So,
When you get those kind of numbers, do you not sit back and go, "Oh, like I did that"?
I know. Well, the Haven House. Are you familiar with the Haven House in Blount County?
I am.
They put that on the site even before the book raised $10,800 before it was even published, because they put it on a silent auction, and then 2 people bid on it, $5,400, and then they did it twice. So that's $10,800. And then I went back because of Mama's story, in a way to carry on her memory. I did one production run of little T-shirts, and so I give that back. Like Mama says, "Be nice." And then the other one was for my dad, and it says, "Hug a farmer, they feed you."
I saw the green shirts. Yes.
So they feed you. So that was just part of giving back. But no, as far as the business is concerned, the book business is not. Like, if I wanted to make money for profit, I would not do the book business. I would be doing something else. It's ended up costing a lot. And then plus, I have a manufacturing background, so this took 8 years. So when you in manufacturing, it's all about your time and your effort and trying to get the best price and make the best products. Well, when you figure 8 years, I'll never get that back. And 2 years of nonstop editing on top of editing. And Ernest Hemingway on one page changed as much as 56 times, editing.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's why, and knowing my weakness too is that I could tell the story, but putting it on paper, I went back and read 101 most laughed out loud books. So I want people to laugh, because life's hard. Mama's got dementia, you know, and Daddy's got a brain tumor, and it's all of that story. So it was having to learn how they would write the story and leave a hook and try to get you to read the next chapter. So all that was a science. But the past 2 years, so 8 years to write it, 2 years for rewriting, and I was fortunate enough to have beta readers. They would read, and I was the only author with this publisher that did a spreadsheet that every time they laughed, every time they smiled, every time they, cried or teared up, or if they did a question mark. A question mark's not good, because question mark means I know what it is, but they didn't understand it. So with them, and then I had a lot of editors early on that I had to do edited on top of editing on top of editing. Then the publisher, once the publisher got it, then they edited based on their standards. So really at the very end, all the acknowledgments from the beta readers to all the authors, and Sherry Gardner-Howe was the very first instructor that got me to start writing the book. And so but she had passed away before the book was finished, but I sent it to her husband. But it really took a village, because there were so many people that helped with it.
You can tell you have a business mind to sit there and do a spreadsheet, to take down all of their different reactions.
I know.
That is awesome.
Yeah, they couldn't believe it, because I knew when I'm. If I did stand up, I could tell you're laughing. I mean, you've laughed 12 times since I've been here. I could see that you're laughing. But on the written word, I'd be at 2 a.m. writing. I'd be ho. I'm so funny. I'm so hilarious. Well, I'd go eat. I'd come back. I'd be I'm not funny at all.
Oh no.
Because it's funny, and that's what my editor said, that humor is subjective. Because because what I may
That's
think's
right.
funny, you may not, or I may think it's funny and it just may not be. So it's very difficult to get it done, but thank goodness. And you could spend another 10 years finishing it. But I really wanted to get it before it gets worse, and then, and then you finally just have to cut it off and say, that's the best I can do. That's the best I can do. So.
How do you stay so positive? I mean, here it is, you're giving back, you're living life, you always have a smile on your face. And yet you've gone through this with your mom,
Yes,
your mama,
yes.
and then your dad with his brain tumor,
Yes,
which we didn't even get into, and then Big Ed and his
and all that
decline.
too. So, but I always said my claim to fame was, and we actually had a little sign at work. You always take a negative and make it positive. So, and this too shall pass. It's always, it's, whether it's good or bad, that's always going to pass, and always just think on the positive side.
Wow. So with that, you philanthropist of the year? You were...
Yeah, that was from the Blount County Chamber, and normally it was at our trade show time, and something told me to come back to fly in, and I had no idea that that I was even going to get that, so I was kind of blown away. But what was so cool, of the kids, I had like 4 kids that were there to see me get that award, so that was really cool.
The kids. Now,
the 15 kids.
You have, I know you have one.
Yeah, we call him the Blood Kid, and he hates to be called Rock Star, but we call him the Rock Star Kid.
Okay, but 15 others,
yeah,
you said?
well, and really even more than that. If you look, did you see all the kids on the steps and the website? Okay.
But who are these kids?
Okay, so how that started was Dustin, we call him the Blood Kid. He was in sports, and then he was a football player. He was like all region basketball player. But then he stopped and did a band, and he got obsessed with this band. Well, then it's all the grouping, and of course I'm a junk food eater, and so it's kind of like you feed the people.
Y'all are coming over, here's some Cheetos. Y'all are coming over, here goes some brownies.
But as the kids grew, and I took it seriously because a lot of these kids, they had homes, but they had other siblings, and we had a fun place. We had a basement. They had games. We had a pool table. We had a pinball machine, and plus we had food. It's all about feeding the food. But as the kids got older, the rules had to change because when the kids got to driving, I not only took the keys away, but I took their shoes away because like they snuck out one time, and there is a story in the book about the boys think they're going to sneak out, but they get caught because Big Ed's an undercover investigator. So I mean, what are you doing thinking you're going to sneak out?
Sit down.
So he goes and gets them and shines it. Flashlight. They're all deers in headlights. So they all went back to William Blount School and telling the story how they thought they were, sneaking out, but then they didn't. So, but it was being, of course, all those kids are now having kids, and now they have their own lives. And just all the girls, we try to go every year to a beach trip or somewhere just to keep, keep all that together. So.
Wait, you all are that close that you all still?
Yes, we still do. And I'm on the girls, I'm on their little thread, on their little Facebook Messenger. So it just, it honors me. But that's why it keeps me young, because I stay young because of them. And then I say, well, have you got your goals? I always we go on a trip. I say, okay, let's get your goals sheet out, because they turned 40. And that was a big number. So like, okay, what's on your goal sheet? And then when they were younger, back in the day when I was trying to raise all these kids, Zig Ziglar and much of them was a motivational. So, okay, kids, you're going to have to listen to these motivational tapes. So it's just trying to make a difference in the kids' lives. So you just did the best you can do.
I love that. You got to tell the toilet paper story, the outhouse.
Oh, the outhouse.
So this is the story where I went home and I was like, I just listened to a woman tell a story about an outhouse being named after her.
Okay, so that's funny. So I'm in the Kiwanis Club, Maryville Kiwanis. We had the director at that time was Bob Patterson, and he was hired to come in to build the Smoky Mountain Heritage Center. He had naming opportunities for cabins, all different kinds of, all cabins, barns, cattle liver barns, and everything. Well, it was to sponsor it or whatever.
Right.
So he had all this stuff, and he came and spoke to us. Well, they had this little outhouse. Well, who wants to be named after an outhouse? Nobody.
Wouldn't even think of it.
Who didn't even think about that? And plus, it was a lot of money. So I raised my hand. So I said, so, Bob, I said, my initials are BS. I thought, well, that would go along with the outhouse. And so I said, well, I'll donate, because nobody was going to donate to this little outhouse, and it's just a one-holer. It's just a one-seat outhouse and one-holer. But what we did was, okay, so he said, okay, and I gave X amount, whatever.
Yes.
But I said, well, for a joke, because it's a joke. So we had, and that's also on my website, we had a toilet paper cutting. We had all the mayors to come, Black County mayor, the Townsend mayor. We had a toilet paper cutting. We had barbecue. We had lemonade to drink. We had chocolate cake. It was so funny. But there was a sign there, and it said, that was my quote, it's like, may your life be like a roll of toilet paper, long and useful. And we had decals. We had decals printed, and we gave that out. So it was just kind of, but the big thing, yeah. But the big thing, the reason I did all that, because who cares about an outhouse or whatever. But at the time, I was serving on the board for New Hope Children's Advocacy Center for Abused Children, and also. For Haven House, and so for you to come, you just brought toilet paper. So we raised like 500 rolls of toilet paper that we split between these two nonprofits. So it's really giving back to the nonprofits, because otherwise, I mean, it was fun, and also helped the Heritage Center, because people didn't know what the Heritage Center was. He was trying to get people to come.
The publicity.
The publicity of it. And then these children that do a field trip, and my outhouse is the most visited on the property. I'm so proud. I'm so proud. But these children don't know what that is. So I think that's kind of interesting too. So.
Oh my God, you tell the absolute funniest and best stories. Why do you love East Tennessee? Why do you give back the way you do?
Well, I think I've traveled all over the world, and in that story, I'm like Dorothy. I go all over the world, and growing up as a little girl, growing up on a farm, Mama is from Missouri, and when those relatives would come in, we'd take them to the mountains. I'm like, well, why would we take them to the mountains? Because see, I grew up with the mountains. I'm like, well, I didn't understand that.
Every day.
Well, guess what? When I started traveling the world, I understood it, because I'm like, oh, wow, East Tennessee is so special. We do live in God's country. This is God's country, and I've been all the way around to say that it's God's country. So that's why I circle right back.
It's funny you should say that. I remember when I first got my job here, and I came over for my interview, and I was in Clarksville. So that was my first time driving through the plateau.
Yes.
And I remember calling my dad and going, Dad, I'm from Miami, everything's flat.
Right,
I was so confused. I was like, Dad, I just rode. They put the road through the mountain. I was so stunned. So yeah, it really is gorgeous.
Yes, people just don't realize that. But I think if this is all you've known in East Tennessee, you maybe don't appreciate it as much as going around to see all the different. And I've done a lot of missionary work. And when you do a missionary work, and when people are struggling and from poverty-driven countries, they just don't know how lucky. We're just so lucky and blessed to be here.
And you're making the most of it.
Making the most of it.
Thank you so much. You are absolutely a pleasure to talk to.
Thank you.